I stared at the rumpled sheets, a knot forming in my throat as the truth sank in. The lingering scent of sweat and sex hung heavy in the air, a cruel mockery of the life I thought I had. How could he? How could she? Cynthia. Rick's voice trembled with guilt as he pulled the covers up, his bare chest glistening with perspiration. It's not what it looks like. I wanted to scream, to lash out at the two people I loved most in this world, but all I could muster was a bitter laugh. Really? Because it sure as hell looks like you were screwing my little sister in our bed. Kristen's face was buried in her hands, her slender frame shaking with sobs. Sin, I'm so sorry. Don't, I snapped, my voice like shattered glass. Just don't. Rick reached for me, his expression a mask of desperation. Baby, please, let me explain. I recoiled from his touch, bile rising in my throat. Explain what? That you betrayed me with the one person I should have been able to trust above all others? That you turned our home, our marriage, into a cheap motel room tryst? It was a mistake, he pleaded, tears welling in his eyes. A horrible, stupid mistake. It'll never happen again, I swear. I barked out a harsh laugh, raking my fingers through my hair. You're damn right it won't, because we're done, Rick. Over. I want you both out of my house by tomorrow night. Sin, no, Kristen cried, clutching the sheets to her naked body. Please, we never meant to hurt you. Well, you did. The anguish lanced through me like a white-hot blade. You betrayed me in the worst possible way, and I'll never be able to look at either of you the same again. Rick reached for me again, but I shoved him away, my anger and hurt overriding any lingering love. Don't touch me. Just get your things and go. We're through. As I stormed out, the enormity of what had happened threatened to crush me. My life, my family, everything I held dear, shattered in an instant by the two people I trusted most. The incessant knocking at my door wouldn't stop. I knew it was Rick, begging for another chance like he had been all week. Part of me wanted to ignore him, to shut out his pleas and hollow promises. But a larger part, the part that still foolishly clung to the memories of happier times, compelled me to answer. What do you want, Rick? I sighed, pulling open the door to find him disheveled and bleary-eyed. Sin, please, you have to listen to me. He reached for my hand, but I snatched it away. It was one stupid mistake, that's all, a moment of weakness that'll never happen again. I scoffed, crossing my arms over my chest. With my own sister? How could you do that to me, to us? Tears welled in his eyes as he dropped to his knees. I don't know, baby. I was drunk and angry, and she was there, comforting me. One thing led to another, and before I knew it... He trailed off, burying his face in his hands. God, I'm so sorry. You have to believe me. For a moment, a fleeting moment, I almost did believe him. The anguish in his voice, the raw emotion etched on his face, it tugged at the fragile threads still tying me to this broken man. But then the image of them tangled together, naked and sweating, flashed before my eyes, and a fresh wave of rage washed over me. Get up, I spat, pulling him to his feet with surprising strength. Get up and look me in the eye when you're begging for another chance you don't deserve. His eyes were wild, desperate. Sin, I love you. What we have had, it's real. Don't throw it all away because of one horrible lapse in judgment. One lapse? I shook my head in disbelief. Rick, you slept with my baby sister, in our marriage bed. How can I ever trust you again after that kind of betrayal? You can, he insisted, grasping my shoulders. I'll do anything, anything at all to prove myself to you. Just say you'll give me another shot. For a long moment, I searched his eyes for any hint of the man I fell in love with all those years ago. The man who held my hand on our first date, who cried tears of joy when I walked down the aisle, who promised to love and cherish me until the end of our days. But all I saw was a broken shell, a man hollowed out by his own selfish lies and infidelity. No, I said, my voice quiet but firm. It's over, Rick. The papers will be filed in the morning. As I shut the door, blocking out his anguished wails, I felt something inside me harden. He made his choice when he betrayed me so completely. And now it was my turn to choose, to fight for what was left of my life and my dignity. No matter how much it hurt, the cramped bathroom felt suffocating as I stared at the two pink lines glaring back at me. Pregnant. Of all the twists this nightmare could have taken, I never expected this. A harsh laugh escaped my lips as I sank to the cold tile floor, my back against the wall. Of course I would be pregnant with Rick's child in the midst of his affair with Kristen. The universe had quite the cruel sense of irony. Part of me wanted to grab the test and hurl it across the room, to scream and rage against this latest cosmic injustice. But a larger part felt an overwhelming sense of calm wash over me. This baby, innocent and pure, was the one good thing to come from the ashes of my marriage. My child. Mine alone to love and cherish, free from the stain of their father's betrayal. The decision was made before I could second-guess it. I would keep this baby and raise it on my own if I had to. Rick didn't deserve to be part of its life, not after what he'd done. The buzz of my phone shook me from my reverie. Kristen's name flashed across the screen, no doubt another tortured plea for forgiveness to join the dozens already clogging my voicemail. With a surge of anger, I hurled the phone against the wall, watching it shatter into pieces. "Sin?" Rick's muffled voice came through the door. "Everything okay in there?" I almost laughed at the absurdity of his question, as if anything could ever be okay between us again. "I'm pregnant," I called out, my voice eerily calm. "The test just confirmed it." There was a long pause before he responded. Are you sure it's mine?" White-hot rage lanced through me at his implication. "Of course it's yours, you son of a bitch," I roared, leaping to my feet. Who else's would it be? The door flew open, and he stood there, hands raised in surrender. "Sin, I didn't mean it like that. I need to know for sure." "Well, you can be damn sure," I spat, shoving past him into the bedroom. "I haven't been with anyone else, unlike you." He flinched at the venom in my words, but pressed on. Okay, I believe you. Just please let me be a part of this baby's life." I whirled on him, eyes blazing with fury. "After what you did? After destroying everything we built together by screwing my own sister? You don't get that right, Rick. Not anymore." His face crumpled in anguish. "Sin, please, I'm begging you, that baby, it's all I have left now." "No," I said, my voice hardening to steel. "You made your choices, just like I'm making mine. And I choose to raise this child away from the toxicity of your lies and betrayal. We're through." As the tears streamed down his cheeks, I felt something inside me finally break free. The naive, love-struck girl who thought her fairy tale would last forever. In her place stood a woman reborn, hardened by the cruelest of life's realities, yet stronger for having survived it. I was done being the victim. From now on, I would be the author of my own destiny, and Rick would play no part in it. The baby kicked insistently, as if sensing the tension radiating off me. I rubbed my swollen belly, trying in vain to soothe the life growing inside me, a life that would soon be thrust into the chaos of my crumbling world. "You can't be serious, Cynthia." Rick's voice was laced with disbelief and more than a hint of anger. "Asking for that much in the settlement is highway robbery." I met his gaze levelly, my jaw set. "I'm deadly serious. After what you put me through, I deserve every penny." He raked his fingers through his thinning hair, pacing the length of the lawyer's office. "But that amount, it'll leave me with next to nothing to start over with. Where's the fairness in that?" A harsh laugh escaped my lips. "Fairness? You want to talk to me about fairness after you cheated on me with my own flesh and blood?" I leaned forward, my eyes boring into his. "I bent over backwards to make our marriage work, to build a life with you. And you threw it all away for what? A cheap thrill with my baby sister?" Rick flinched as if I'd struck him. Good. I wanted my words to cut deep, to make him feel even an ounce of the pain he'd inflicted on me. "Sin, please." He dropped to his knees in front of me, clasping my hands in his clammy grip. "I was a fool, an absolute idiot, but you have to believe I never meant to hurt you like this. I love you more than anything." I snatched my hands away, bile rising in my throat. "Save it for someone who still believes your lies, Rick. I'm through being made a fool of." His face crumpled, the mask of the repentant husband slipping. "So that's it, then? You're just going to take me for everything I've got and leave me destitute?" "I'm taking what I deserve," I shot back, rising to my feet with effort. "A chance to get back on my feet and provide for this baby without having to rely on you for a damn thing." Rick's eyes narrowed to slits. "You're making a huge mistake here, Cynthia. Don't think for a second the courts will side with you over this." I matched his glare with one of my own. "I have a pretty strong case, as I recall. A cheating husband who lied and betrayed his heavily pregnant wife in the worst way imaginable. I shook my head slowly. I like my chances just fine, thanks. As I turned to leave, the fight seeming to drain from Rick's body, a tiny voice inside whispered that maybe I was going too far, that the settlement figure I'd named was perhaps too steep, too vengeful. But another voice, louder and more insistent, drowned it out. This was what he deserved, I told myself, the consequences of his unforgivable actions. If it broke him, so be it. He'd brought it on himself. He didn't get to play the victim, not this time, not after everything he'd taken from me. The pounding on my door was incessant, jarring me from the first decent sleep I'd gotten in weeks. I knew without looking who it would be, the same person who had shattered what little peace remained in my life. Throwing on a robe, I flung open the door to find Kristen standing there, her eyes red-rimmed and desperate. "What do you want?" I spat before she could speak. "Here to rub my face in your home-wrecking ways again?" She flinched as if I'd struck her. "Good. Sin, please. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but you have to hear me out." "I don't have to do a damn thing," I shot back, arms crossed over my chest. "You made your bed when you slithered into mine with my husband. Now you can lie in it." Tears spilled down her blotchy cheeks. "I'm pregnant, Sin, with Rick's baby." The words hung in the air like a suffocating fog as I struggled to process them. Of course she was pregnant too. The universe just loved twisting the knife deeper with each new torture. Well, isn't that just perfect? I laughed bitterly. The two lying, cheating snakes get to play family while I raise my child alone. How storybook of you both. No. She reached for me, but I jerked away. "No, Sin, you don't understand. I need your help." I stared at her incredulously. "My help? After you stabbed me in the back in the worst way imaginable, what makes you think I'd lift a finger to help you?" Kristen's eyes were wild, pleading. "Because Rick, he wants nothing to do with this baby. He said it'll ruin his chances of getting back together with you." White-hot rage lanced through me at her words. Of course, that bastard would try to weasel his way out of this, to pretend the ultimate consequence of his actions didn't exist. Just like he'd tried to pretend his affair was some momentary lapse, a blip to be forgotten. "So what?" I shrugged, feigning indifference. "Sounds like a personal problem to me. You two can sort out your own messes." "But I can't do this alone," she wailed, fresh tears streaming down her face. "I don't have anyone else, Sin. You're my family." Family. The word was like a physical slap across my face. This snake who had violated the sanctity of my family in the worst way was trying to claim that bond again? After everything? You lost any right to call me family the second you spread your legs for my husband, I hissed, poking her sharply in the chest. As far as I'm concerned, you're just the worthless homewrecker he stepped out with, nothing more. Her face crumpled in anguish, but I was beyond caring. Let her feel the slightest fraction of the pain she'd inflicted upon me. It was the least she deserved. Now get off my porch, I said, my voice dangerously low, and if I ever see your face again, I can't be held responsible for what I might do. As she turned and fled, I slammed the door behind her, the sound echoing through the hall like a gunshot. My hands were shaking, every muscle taut, as the weight of her words finally hit me. Rick was going to be a father again, with her. The idea was like acid burning through my veins. If he thought for 1 second that he could just walk away from this, from them, he had another thing coming. I would make sure he paid for this latest betrayal, if it was the last thing I ever did. The courtroom was deathly silent as the judge cleared his throat, envelope in hand. This was it, the moment that would decide just how far Rick's lies and betrayal had really gone. The DNA results confirm that Mr. Richard Moore. The judge paused, eyes flickering between Rick and a visibly distraught Kristen. Is not the biological father of the child Miss Randall is carrying. A collective gasp rippled through the gallery, but I remained motionless, utterly unsurprised. Of course he wasn't the father, just another lie in the tangled web he'd spun. Rick, however, looked as though he'd been struck. What? That's impossible. She said. Liar! Kristen screeched, rounding on him with balled fists. You lied to me, you bastard. Told me it was yours, so I'd leave Sin alone. I watched impassively as the court officers struggled to restrain her, something like pity stirring in my chest. She was just another of his victims. Really, a fool led astray by his silver tongue. The judge pounded his gavel, restoring order. If we could return to the matter at hand. His steely gaze fell on Rick. Mr. Moore, you'd also be wise to take this opportunity to revise the financial statements you submitted during these proceedings. A bead of sweat trickled down Rick's brow as he tugged at his collar. I'm not sure what you mean, Your Honor. Oh, I think you know exactly what I mean. The judge's tone brooked no argument. The tax documents and income statements we subpoenaed paint a very different picture than what you originally claimed. My head whipped around as I studied Rick's ashen face. He couldn't have, could he? Not after everything. But his silence, his refusal to meet my eyes, spoke volumes. You lied. The words slipped out in a hoarse whisper. You lied about your finances, too, to try and cheat me out of what I deserved. Rick opened his mouth, then closed it, shaking his head slowly. In that moment, I saw him for what he truly was, a sniveling coward who would do or say anything to save his own skin. My heart twisted violently in my chest. The judge fixed him with a withering stare. Mr. Moore, you have committed perjury and fraud upon this court with your falsified financial records. Not only that, but you engaged in a reprehensible pattern of lies and deceit that allowed this entire fiasco to unfold. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in as the courtroom held its collective breath. Therefore, I am awarding the entirety of the settlement amount requested by Mrs. Moore, in addition to the marital home and all other major assets. His gaze bored into Rick's stunned face. You have only your own dishonorable actions to blame for these consequences, sir. This ruling is final. The world seemed to tilt wildly around me as the judge's words echoed through the chamber. I'd won. I'd beaten him at his own lying game and taken everything in the process. A hollow victory, to be sure, but a victory nonetheless. As the bailiffs led a shattered Rick away, I caught his eye one last time. Any remnants of the man I'd loved, the man I'd devoted half my life to, were gone, burned away by the flames of his selfish deceptions. In their place was a broken husk, a sobbing wretch brought low by his own karmic reckoning. And as he disappeared through the door, I knew I would never look upon his face again. The spacious home felt cavernous and empty as I wandered its halls, my son Jacob babbling happily in my arms. This place, which had once represented the life Rick and I strived to build together, now stood as a monument to his failures. Every gleaming surface, every expensive furnishing, had been bought with the hard-earned money he tried so desperately to keep from me. The money that was rightfully mine after his countless lies and betrayals. A hollow victory, to be sure, but a victory nonetheless. Jacob's tiny hands patted my cheeks, drawing my attention back to his cherubic face. In that moment, watching his bright eyes crinkle with laughter, I knew I had made the right choice. This house, this life I was building from the ashes, was all for him now. Rick was merely a speck in the rearview mirror, a crucial step on the journey that led me here, but no longer a presence in our lives. I had survived his deceit and emerged stronger, more resilient than I could have imagined. The buzzer rang, shattering the moment's peace. Shifting Jacob to my hip, I made my way to the intercom, the voice identification system cheerily announcing, "Kristen Randall at the gate." I froze, hot anger lancing through me. The audacity of that snake, showing her face here after everything she'd done. I should have known better than to expect her to slink back into the hole she'd crawled out of. "Ma'am?" The AI's chipper voice piped up again. "Shall I admit the visitor or send them away?" Jaw clenched, I stabbed the comm button. "What do you want, Kristen? Here to try and weasel your way back into my good graces again?" There was a pause, then a tremulous sigh. "Sin, please. I know I'm the last person you want to see right now, but I really need your help." I barked out a harsh laugh. "My help? After you slept with my husband and tried to trap him with a baby that wasn't even his? You've got one hell of a nerve showing up here." I know. Her voice cracked with desperation. "Believe me, I know how badly I've messed up, how much I've hurt you. But Sin, I'm homeless. I've got nowhere else to go." The words hung in the air, deflating my anger for just a moment. As much as I despised her for her actions, she was still my sister, my blood. Could I really turn her away to fend for herself? Jacob gurgled softly, nuzzling my neck, and my resolve hardened once more. She might share my DNA, but she had long since forfeited the honor of being treated like family. "That's not my problem," I said, coldness seeping into my tone. You made your bed when you betrayed me in the worst way. Now you can lie in it. Sin, wait. Her voice was thick with panic. I'm pregnant. For real this time. I can't raise this baby on the streets, please. I recoiled as if struck, bile rising in my throat. Of course, she would stoop to that level of deception again, using an innocent child as a pawn in her twisted mind games. Save your lies, Kristen, I spat, fighting to keep my voice steady. I don't have anything left to give you. No money, no shelter, no help. You're on your own. As her muffled sobs faded, I slumped against the wall, cradling Jacob close. In that moment, I pitied her even as I reviled her very existence, for she was well and truly alone in this world of her own making. But not me. Never again. I had my son, my beautiful reason for persevering through all the darkness. And as long as he was by my side, I knew I could overcome any challenge, any deception. Rick's betrayal may have tried to break me, but it had also remade me into a fiercer, more uncompromising version of myself. One that would never let anyone jeopardize the life I was building for me and my child. Not Kristen. Not Rick himself. No one. The sun-dappled park was alive with the sounds of children at play, their laughter ringing out across the vibrant green expanse. I smiled as Jacob raced ahead of me, his tiny legs pumping furiously as he chased after a kaleidoscope of bubbles. So much had changed in the 5 years since that fateful night, the one that shattered my world and set me on this new path as a single mother. Yet watching my son's face light up with unbridled joy, I knew all the pain and heartache had been worth it 1,000 times over. Mommy, look how high I can swing. Jacob's excited voice drew my gaze to the playground, where he was launching himself into the air with reckless abandon. Chuckling, I made my way over, ready to rein in his antics before he gave himself a concussion. All right, little daredevil, let's take it down a notch before you. The words caught in my throat as my eyes landed on a hunched, disheveled figure sitting alone on a nearby bench. Even from a distance, the stringy hair, sallow complexion, and haunted eyes were instantly recognizable. Rick? A lead weight formed in the pit of my stomach as Jacob continued playing, oblivious to the ghost from our past. Part of me wanted to grab his hand and flee, to shield him from the man who had put us through so much pain and anguish. But another part, the part that had grown stronger and more resilient with each passing year, felt something else stirring inside me. Not anger, nor hatred, but pity. Steeling myself, I made my way towards the bench, my heart pounding in my ears. Up close, the toll of Rick's lies and deceptions was even more stark. His clothes hung loosely, his face etched with lines that made him appear decades older than his years. Well, I said softly, watching as his head snapped up in shock. If it isn't the master of deception himself, fancy meeting you here. Rick's eyes widened as he took me in, his hands visibly trembling. See? Cynthia? Is that really you? In the flesh, I gestured vaguely at his haggard appearance. Looks like the last few years haven't been too kind to you, Rick? He flinched as though I'd struck him, turning his gaze downward in shame. Yeah, well, I guess that's what happens when you lose everything due to your own stupidity. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us, punctuated only by Jacob's peals of laughter in the distance. Part of me felt a twisted sense of satisfaction at seeing the great lie spinner brought so low, but the larger part simply felt sadness. For the broken man before me, and for the bright future we had once dreamed of building together. You know, I said at last, for what it's worth, I did love you once, with everything I had. Rick's shoulders slumped as he nodded jerkily. I know, believe me, I know, and not a day goes by that I don't regret throwing that all away. Well, regrets won't change the past. I shrugged, turning to watch Jacob scramble up the slide. All we can do is try to learn from our mistakes and do better going forward. As if sensing the weight of our conversation, Jacob raced over and flung himself into my arms, his bright eyes shining with adoration. In that moment, I knew I had all the love and joy I would ever need right here. Who's this, Mommy? He asked innocently, pointing at Rick. I opened my mouth, 1,000 bitter recriminations rising to my lips. But one look at my son's cherubic face, and I realized. Rick's deceptions were in the past. The struggles he had put us through had only served to make me stronger, more resilient, more able to cherish the family I had fought so hard to build. No one important, baby, I murmured, kissing Jacob's brow. Just a ghost letting go of its chains. Let's go get some ice cream. As we turned and walked away, leaving Rick to watch with slumped shoulders, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. His mistakes, his lies, they no longer had any power over me or my life. I was free to love, to laugh, to live my life on my own terms, and in that moment, nothing else mattered.